Hey guys, my name is Loveless, and we are back with Mollitudo, or whatever it's called. I call it Molly whenever I'm writing this shit, but it's like close enough to being correct. And we're getting closer and closer to Deku being saved because he finally got in contact with Kachan, and it's been literally over 2 months since I've actually done this story. So let's get straight into it. Katsuki was angsty from the lack of news. He knew, logically, that it's only been a few hours since he had talked to Aizawa and All Might. He had gotten back to class, but he was not in the mood to study. No one could focus, too. The fact that Deku hadn't appeared after the weekend passed only served to set in reality. The atmosphere was gloomy and tense. Every time Katsuki's phone buzzed, Yudaraka, Kirishima, Todoroki, and Ida would immediately snap their heads to him. He knew Todoroki was also observing him, making sure he didn't start texting frantically. He wanted to shout in frustration. It almost felt like the investigation was going nowhere. He wanted to call Aizawa, yell in his ears for information. He felt useless. Deku could be dying as he sat in class studying. He also kept a lookout for updates from Koda, but the anima hero just shook his head every time someone threw a questioning glance. Before he knew it, classes were over. He stormed back into the dorms, hands clenched tightly over his phone. He felt so pent up. He almost wanted to use his quirk to blast back to the dorms just to let go of a few explosions. The gloomy atmosphere hovered during dinner. Katsuki settled for angrily stabbing his rice, imagining it to be the asshole just so he can let something out. After dinner, Aizawa appeared together with All Might. They immediately surround the two of them. "What is it?" Yudaraka asked, hands clenched. "Is it news?" "Good and bad. Good thing is we found out the man in question," All Might said. "We know his name, Vexen Egnar. His quirk is registered in the registry as null." "Fuck yes! When can we go get Deku then?" Katsuki snarled, ready to punch a man. Aizawa tensed. "Bad news is we don't have a location." "That means we still can't find Midoriya?" Todoroki said, sounding frustrated. His eyebrows were furrowed, face tight with stress lines. "God damn it!" Katsuki spat out. Suddenly there was a loud commotion. As Koda seemed to yell, Katsuki whipped his head back, and it was like he was teleported with how fast he ran to Koda. Yudaraka asked almost desperately, "Did your animal friends find something?" Koda nodded. "They have an area. They saw the man I described to them. They also found a room." Aizawa looked alarmed. "Give me an area," he said, looking at his phone for a map. Koda continued listening to the small rat, who was accompanied by a cockroach. "They said it was near a supermarket. Sensei, they can't really tell distance." He finished, looking disappointed and fearful. "What the hell? We're back to square one?" Katsuki snapped. "Wait. What if we followed them? Would they be able to lead us?" Koda looked at the rat as he relayed the information. He then said, "They might not be sure they can track back. They can't really remember after walking such a long distance." He said, looking ready to cry. "I'm sorry." Katsuki wanted to curse, but Kirishima placed a hand on him to stop him, while Yudaraka said, "No, it's okay. We're glad you helped, Koda. You even got the insects to help, and we know how much you're scared of them." Suddenly his phone beeped. Katsuki looked. "Oh shit," he breathed out. His vision fuzzed, and it felt like he was spiraling into an attack, like the one he had this morning. All Might looked almost murderous as he looked at the photo. It was a zoomed-in picture of Deku's chest, but it was even worse than the first day. His chest was completely covered in blood, and the area around his cuts were torn into. Another photo showed Deku's face looking completely blank, saliva coating his chin. He was slumped forward, the only thing preventing him from falling over being the chains tied to his hands. His eyes looked soulless, blank. It was like he died. Like, because Katsuki refused to believe he could have died. Katsuki wanted to scream. That bastard didn't even send a message this time. Fuck. Did this Vexen fucker really break him this time? Deku. Aizawa looked at the phone, face tensed. He looked at the rest of them. Don't look at it. Bakugo, give me the phone. Katsuki ignored him. His fingers felt like they were sculptured. His hands clenched around the phone in a tight grip. His breathing picked up. Fuck. Deku. Fuck. Bakugo. A hand on his shoulder, one covering the screen. Aizawa, calm down. It was then he noticed he was gasping, and everyone was giving him horrified looks, wondering what could have caused his reaction. His hands trembled. Yuraraka looked like she wanted to rip the phone out of Katsuki's hand. Todoroki leaned forward, face set into a determined look as his hands reached out, but Katsuki numbly moved his hands away. Don't, he murmured. He didn't want the others to see this. It would break them. Suddenly the phone rang. Katsuki saw the caller ID. Shitty nerd. His body, which had started to feel cold from shock, started feeling warm from all the blood rushing to his head. He answered it, shouting like his lungs had been trying to empty all the air inside. Bastard! You dare fucking call me? I'm gonna kill you! He never expected to hear the voice on the other end. Kachan? Fuck? Deku? Katsuki's voice became hushed with shock. The air seemed to still, but everyone bursted into movement. Deku! Yuraraka yelled, hands already moving. Her voice was shrill, her body taut like a bowstring. Aizawa and All Might had tensed, and Aizawa looked ready to bolt from his seat then and there. Todoroki was instantly moving in, as if he wanted to merge with the phone. Kirishima and Ito were yelling something about Deku. Shut up! Katsuki yelled, voice shaky and panicked, silencing the room. He hurriedly ripped the phone from his ear, pressing the speaker and putting it on the table. There was a silence on the other end. The only thing they could hear was panicked breathing. Deku? Katsuki called out hesitantly, then urgently. Deku! He heard clattering sounds, then a soft voice. Kachan? Katsuki's throat clenched. Deku's voice. He was still alive. He used the voice to ground him, his heart pounding like it wanted to escape from his chest. He noticed that his voice, although soft, sounded hoarse, like the user had been screaming for a while. Midoriya. Aizawa's authoritative voice rang out clearly. Where are you? Sensei? Deku's voice seemed to hitch, like he was realizing everyone was slowly becoming real. I don't know, but I already turned on my GPS. Aizawa, upon hearing this, immediately pulled a phone. Deku, are you okay? Yuraraka asked urgently. A long pause. Deku? Yuraraka asked again, biting her lip. Her eyes watered. All Might leaned forward, his face unreadable, as he said in a smoothing, deep voice. Midoriya, my boy, are you okay? Deku responded with a sob. All Might's face pinched like he wanted to cry along. We're going to come get you. I'm sorry. Everyone huddled over the phone, breathing stilled as they waited for Deku to say anything. There was only silence from over the phone. Speak to us, Midoriya. All Might continued softly, this time his voice betraying his emotions, shaking slightly at Deku's name. His eyes pained. Let us know you're okay. Please, my boy. I'm tired. I want to go home. I really hurt. His voice broke off as he choked. The phone muffled the sounds of Deku's gagging, but by the looks of everyone's stricken face, it was still distinctive enough to disturb those present. Katsuki wondered if Deku was choking on his own blood. They were so close, but what if Deku was already dying, and they were getting the front row seat to his last words? Stupid. Stop thinking about that. Katsuki, you're a fucking idiot. But his mind just kept going back to the picture he saw. There was shuffling sounds, followed by a wet squelching sound, which sounded like Deku was sitting in something wet. Please don't be his fucking blood. Holy fucking God. Kachan? Katsuki could hear the questioning tone. Kachan. Deku, I'm here. Katsuki breathed out, gripping the phone tightly as he snatched it off the table, as if he was holding onto the nerd himself. Kachan. Deku just kept whispering, sobbing, and hiccuping, clearly heard over the speaker. Aizawa then suddenly said, "We got a hit." For the first time in 4 days, he looked hopeful. He looked at Koda. Koda, bring the mouse. We'll use the GPS for a general location. The mouse can narrow down the area. No time to lose. Todoroki called out, Midoriya, you're gonna be okay. We've got you, Midoriya. Ida added in, his face clouded over. Everything will be fine. Just hang in there, Kirishima said loudly, reassuringly. Please, was all Deku could reply. We're coming, shitty Deku. Katsuki was already walking as everyone rushed outside. His heart squeezed when he heard Deku clean loudly in response. Hang in there. We're coming. Good job, Deku. Kachan, please hurry. I can't. They looked at the phone concerningly when Deku stopped talking. He's back. Deku whispered shakily. Please come. Before they could reply, the phone disconnected. Katsuki looked at Aizawa. Please say we're going. Aizawa nodded in response. We're going. Izuku barely managed to place the phone back on the floor, pushing it out of range and feigning his blank state before the door opened. He trembled involuntarily as Vex entered, holding a plastic bag. Vex seemed to perk up upon seeing Izuku's prone form. Looks like you're still gone, he said, before his eyes landed on the phone. Ah, he cursed. Good thing you're still out of it. Wouldn't want you to use this. He pocketed the phone. While I can't say I don't enjoy your disassociated state, I kind of want to hear your cries again. He nudged Izuku's cuts with his foot and laughed when he flinched. He placed a hand on his open cuts, rubbing it harshly, covering his own hand in blood. He dug around the cuts. Izuku whimpered, taking in a shuddered breath. Come back, Izuku, Vex said, as he smeared Izuku's blood onto his face, thumbing his cheeks. His other hand grabbed Izuku's hair. Izuku flinched bodily without meaning to, as he threw himself back. Ah! He cried out as his wounds were jostled. Welcome back, Vex said. I'm gonna have to bandage your cut soon so you don't bleed out. But I think I'm kind of addicted to watching you in pain. So what do you think about continuing? Izuku looked at Vex. No, please. Wrong answer, Vex said, pouting as he took something out of the plastic bag. Look at this. He took out a clenching tong. He played with the tool, every click of the tong sending jolts of fear into Izuku's brain. He wanted to puke again. His head was fuzzy. Ever since he made the phone call, God, he hoped he did. And it wasn't some fucked up scenario in his brain made up because he was going crazy. He had been slowly building up with panic. Izuku, upon hearing the voices of his mentors and friends, had broken down into sobs. He couldn't speak, couldn't think. After he had stayed steady enough to inform his teacher that he had turned on the GPS, it was like the walls Izuku built had broken down. He wanted to go home. Do you know what I want to do with this? Vex said, kneeling down, stroking the tool against Izuku's face. Izuku involuntarily twitched his fingers. Aha! You're so clever. Vex looked delighted, tracing the tool down his arms to his fingers. Stall. He had to stall. Please, please. He did not want to feel pain anymore. Why do you enjoy pain? Izuku stuttered. Vex paused in his movements. Oh, Izuku, you never asked me that before. He placed the tool down on the floor as he sat down. Well, I love watching them writhe in pain. You know, those insects, when you squish them and they struggle to live? I love to see them squirm. Have you seen it on humans? It's so delightful when they scream in pain. Vex prodded Izuku's cuts again, and Izuku bit his lip as he struggled not to cry out. Everyone hated my quirk. I mean, who wouldn't want to not be able to use their quirk and suffer in pain as punishment for wanting to use it, right? Izuku murmured, his eyes distant. So I made whoever hated me suffer. I didn't let go of my quirk. I essentially made them useless. Watching them convulse on the ground trying to activate it, it was the best feeling of my life. Vex then patted Izuku's head. Then I saw you, breaking your bones like you didn't care. I never saw someone so determined. I wondered what it would be like to actually watch you writhe in pain. He laughed and said, "And you haven't disappointed me at all." He took the tool and hit him in the chest, hard. Izuku screamed. His chest burned. "Enough talking," Vex said, grabbing his hand. Izuku wrenched it away. He forced himself up, twisting his ankles as much as he could to lean away. Vex cackled. "Why are you even trying? You can't escape from the shackles." He then prodded Izuku's inflamed kneecap, causing him to yell. When Izuku batted away the hands that reached for his fingers, he pushed harder on the kneecap, and Izuku screeched, hands reaching forward to push back the tool. Vex took the chance and grabbed his hand, eyes wild as he positioned the tool. Knowing help was coming made him lose his composure, as he wished they would come in time to save him. Desperation made him struggle. If he struggled, he could escape from the pain this time. "No, please," Izuku breathed out, his other hand grabbing Vex's wrist. "Please, please. You've broken your fingers before, haven't you? This isn't even the worst pain you've felt since you came here," Vex said, frowning, tool clamping down on his thumb. The feeling of cold metal clenching down on his thumb felt like a death sentence. Izuku cried as he felt the tool start to twist. "Please come, please come, please come, please." His cries got louder as his thumb started to feel uncomfortable, a strain steadily building at his joint. He continued to squirm, pushing against his wrist, holding the tool. Vex was looking intensely at his face, teeth exposed as he grinned widely. Then everything exploded. The door flung open as Izuku saw Aizawa rush in. He felt himself go limp as a rush of unadulterated relief flowed through him. Vex didn't even have time to turn back as Aizawa's eyes flashed red, his feet raised and already kicking him out of sight. Then he panicked again. He couldn't breathe as everyone started rushing into the room. His vision swirled again as exhaustion slid into him. He couldn't see anyone he knew. Was Aizawa an illusion? Did he imagine calling them? Were these other people here to take him away into another room? His mind was clouded over with confusion and panic. It made him scared. Hands were placed on him. Voices echoed as they spoke, but Izuku could not process, couldn't hear. "What's going on? Why are their hands on me? Who are these people?" Izuku pulled his hands near his face as he hyperventilated. He shifted back weakly. When hands on him stayed stubbornly plastered onto his skin, he wailed. He didn't know who they were. He was scared. He couldn't see Aizawa. He still didn't know who was touching him. "Please, please don't touch me, please." His chest heaved as he coughed. He twisted his body to the side, feeling his forehead touch the cool ground, feeling saliva drip out of his mouth as he gasped, trying to squirm away from the hands touching him. "Deku!" Kachan's voice pierced through his panic. He looked around, eyes unfocused. All he could hear was his own wheezing and Kachan calling out for him. His eyes continued to search, but his vision was swimming, graying out occasionally. He couldn't see. But he could hear Kachan. "Where's Kachan? Where's Deku?" He heard Kachan again. Then he felt the other hands pushed off of him as Kachon shouted, voice closer this time. Don't fucking touch him. Can't you see he's scared? Then sounds of shuffling, then a voice beside his ear. Deku, it's me. I'm gonna place my hands on you. Soft, familiar hands landed on his shoulders. He knew those hands. They were the only pair of hands that could be this soft. Unkept by the nitroglycerin he's always scented. Izuku trembled. Kachan, he called out tentatively, hands unfurling and reaching towards the blurry figure in front of him. He was gathered into warm arms as Kachan held him close. Fuck, Deku, he heard Kachan say, voice trembling. Fuck. The shackles on his ankles were released, and Izuku cried out as his knee was shifted. He held onto Kachan tighter, as if he was afraid he would disappear. He choked on his sobs as he shook. It's okay, nerd. We're here. Kachan chanted, his gruff voice slowly clearing away the panicked fog in his head. He felt another hand on him, and he flinched, sobbing harder, but he calmed down when it was accompanied by a familiar voice. Deku! Uraraka cried out. Roundface! He heard Kachan hiss above him. Tell him before you touch him, he's terrified. If Izuku was more aware, he would have noticed how Kachan's voice sounded wrecked. But Izuku's brain was still processing, so he didn't. He just pressed his face into Kachan's chest, smelling his familiar scent, focusing on the feeling of Kachan's hands, his warm body, his low voice. Kachan, Kachan, Kachan. Todoroki, his knee. Aizawa's sharp voice rang out. It's just me, Midoriya, Todoroki said soothingly, before Izuku felt a cool hand on his knee. A thin layer of ice layered over his inflamed knee. Izuku shuddered. He whimpered, shifting as his kneecap flared up in pain, then stilled when it subsided to a dull throb, numbed by the ice. Deku, I'm gonna touch you, okay? Uraraka called out, voice soft. Izuku managed to nod shakily before her fingers quickly touched him, and he was weightless. His vision blacked out for a second as vertigo hit him. Kachan let go instinctively, causing Izuku to cry out. A pathetic whine wrenched out of his chest without his control. Kachan! His panicked hands flailing and grabbing onto what he thought was his jacket. I got you. I'm not letting you go. I promise. Kachan immediately replied, hands clutching his fingers. Midoriya, I'm going to wrap your chest, he heard Aizawa say, and he nodded. He felt his chest being wrapped up, and he couldn't hold in his cries as his chest flared up in pain. Kachan's hands wound back around him, gently scooping his back and his thighs, lifting him up effortlessly. Izuku turned his face towards Kachan's chest again. For the first time in days, he breathed in cool, fresh air as they made their way out of the house. Is he okay? He heard Ida ask, his presence hovering close to him. Kirishima was right beside, also asking the same question. I'm not sure. He's almost nonverbal, he heard Uraraka reply in a watery voice. He'll be fine, Aizawa said. We have to go to the hospital. Bakugo, you're coming with us. Yeah, I fucking know. Kachan snapped back, Izuku feeling arms tightening momentarily around him before relaxing. I promised Deku I wouldn't fucking go anywhere. Unable to hold on anymore, Izuku let himself slip into darkness, but this time knowing he was safe in Kachan's arms. Oh my god, that's so sweet. I'm like so happy that the baby is saved. It's so... So now it shall be going uphill instead of completely... We've been like rock bottom for a long time. Took me forever to get to this part. But we made it. He's safe. And it has like a good enough cliffhanger where it's not like punching you in the gut. And it's like, I need to know what happens next. Now it's like, okay, I can stop here. Still want to know what happens next, but it's not like causing me pain. Still causes me a little bit pain. Also, I'm impressed with myself because I did some good voicing of some of these things. It actually scared me. I was a little bit scared. I was like, that came out of my mouth. Ugh. Especially when voicing Vex. I don't like him. I don't think anyone likes him. But, so that's the end of that rambling. So if you want to see more of this amazing story and also Quirk Knife, you know what to do.